In the modern era, elder dragons such as the Chameleos are synonymous with power. Even those living in civilized regions, far away from the wild frontiers of the world, know of the mighty dragons that shake the earth, poison the air, and command the thunder. But these days, there is a certain casualness to it. Elder dragons are just another branch of life, and while powerful, there are many stories of them being bested. Some might even know hunters who have seen or even repelled elder dragons. While they are still feared and respected, as they should be, they are also more understood as natural parts of our world. That was not always the case. In a time before the Hunters Guild, before monster hunting had really even been a way of life anyone imagined, in a time so ancient only the oldest Wyverians recall it, in such a time, elder dragons were already feared beyond measure. Back then, even regular monsters were unstoppable forces that regular people could only try to avoid and escape from. To have an elder dragon appear near your hometown must have felt as if all the forces in the cosmos were conspiring against you. Even as monster hunting started to slowly develop as a profession, elder dragons still remained unknowable and unbeatable. This was not just due to their power, but also because they were unpredictable. Most elder dragons are highly intelligent, and all of them can turn an ecosystem upside down on a whim. It would take a massive, systematic effort to counter that, and in those distant times, there simply was no such thing. Up until a few hundred years ago, the only tool civilization had to somewhat manage the elder dragon threat were the dragon diviners. These Wyverian polymaths used observational and spiritual methods to roughly predict when and where an elder dragon would appear, and warned the surrounding people accordingly. Wyverians are said to be descendants of dragons, a lineage parallel to how humans developed from primates. It is known that they are extremely attuned to the flow of nature, and some have even theorized that under certain conditions, Wyverians can even sense an elder dragon's intentions through some sort of ancestral link. That is merely speculation though, and either way, the accuracy of these dragon diviners was far from perfect. But what truly held them back was that they were scattered across the lands, and that they were inherently disorganized and erratic. There was no protocol, no order, no study to their craft. They merely warned citizens in their vicinity whenever they thought an elder dragon might be near. It was better than nothing, but still not enough. In places where dragon diviners were not available, the people often turned to religion, building entire systems of faith around the worship and appeasement of elder dragons. For what else could they do in the face of such absolute power, but pray that its wrath does not descend upon them? Then, finally, change came at the hands of the Great Elder of Dundorma, known as His Immenseness by some. Frustrated with civilization being constantly on the defensive against elder dragons, the Great Elder summoned all dragon diviners and dragon scholars from across the continent to Dundorma. With them, the Great Elder established the Elder Dragon Observation Center, an organization that would rely on empirical, scientific study of the elder dragons and compile all knowledge regarding them, in an effort to finally push back against the threat. The Great Elder then seized Dundorma's prayer hall and converted it into the Elder Hall, the beating heart of all Elder Dragon research. This paid off tremendously. The Observation Center focused on compiling records and knowledge regarding elder dragons and similarly powerful monsters. By combining the efforts of diviners, scholars, and hunters, Dundorma's Elder Dragon Research Center became a vital part of preventative and ecological research. Using their dragon balloons, scholars observe elder dragons from afar and report all of their behavior and movement back to the center using carrier birds. The center then analyzes the findings, using them to warn settlements ahead of time if an elder dragon appears to be going in their general direction, as well as educating hunters on how to deal with them in the wild. This organized, free flow of information, as well as meticulous record keeping, has proven immensely useful, and similar organizations began appearing almost immediately. One also cannot understate the symbolic power of the Great Elder converting Dundorma's prayer hall into the linchpin of this organization. Standing atop the city, Dundorma's temple had long been a holy place. Its transformation heralded a sort of cultural revolution across the old continent. Seeing the results of Dundorma's scientific approach to elder dragons, many previously religious regions began distancing themselves from worship in favor of an observation-based study of the world, creating an entire generation of eager scholars waiting to join in on the quest to unraveling elder dragons. Of course, in order to inspire, the Elder Dragon Observation Center would need to produce results. Luckily, one of their earliest breakthroughs was in regards to one of the oldest and most venerated myths of the central continent, the Steel Dragon. It appeared in countless legends all across the lands, tales of a metal beast shrouded in storms. It was, coincidentally, also a being that had been worshipped as a weather god by many of the same groups of people who abandoned their faith to help out the observation team after the Great Elder's seizing of the temple. Perhaps this was the reason why the Steel Dragon myth was investigated so thoroughly and so early, many new members of the team being eager to understand the legend that had defined so much of their culture. One way or another, the ambitions and skills of the observation team coalesced and soon bore fruit, as the Steel Dragon was sighted and then studied officially not long after. It was one of the earliest properly recorded elder dragons, given the name Kushala Daora. If you asked a random civilian to describe an elder dragon, most would probably end up reconstructing the Kushala Daora. A slim figure consisting of 4 legs, 2 massive wings, a tail, and a horned head. It is the spitting image of a traditional depiction of a dragon. Then again, many of those traditional depictions probably originate from prehistoric Kushala sightings anyway, so that is not surprising. Of all the known elder dragons, the Kushala Daora is perhaps the best studied one, mainly because it tends to appear near human settlements somewhat frequently. It also has an extremely wide habitat range, appearing all over the Old World and even in some areas of the New World. And, uncharacteristically for an elder dragon, it is a fairly calm creature most of the time, tolerating the presence of animals and even humans much more than most monsters. These factors make it easier to research than most other dragons. But even after having been studied for so long and seen comparatively often, the Kushala Daora is still a fascinating, mysterious creature. For one, it boasts one of the most unusual defensive adaptations ever seen in the animal kingdom: a skin made of metal. The entire hide of the Kushala Daora is metallic, akin to steel in its composition. This hide protects the dragon from all manner of damage. It can't be cut or broken through, and it repels most projectiles, man-made or otherwise. Only extreme heat, such as that emanating from lava or created by fellow dragons, can seriously compromise this armor's integrity. This ultimate defense is probably why Kushala Daora are sometimes seen just strolling around among other creatures. They have little to nothing to fear, since their hides are essentially impenetrable. It isn't just an outer layer of metal either. The skeleton of the Kushala Daora is fused directly into the skin, with external bones mirroring the internal ones. Initially, this was believed to be an exoskeleton, but it has since been discovered that the Kushala Daora does have bones on the inside of its body as well. This double skeleton probably aids with stability and movement. The inner bones keep the body stable, while the outer bones force the heavy metal hide to move by expanding and contracting it. Studying the anatomy of a Kushala is, however, extremely difficult. Even if an intact specimen is recovered, the insides of the dragon are an unintelligible mess of metal fusing and mixing with flesh, so guild scholars have had a hard time making sense of it. It is, for example, still not known how this hide develops in the first place. Like many elder dragons, the Kushala Daora has been observed eating ores, and nothing else. So perhaps it derives its metallic armor from its diet. Another theory is that it might be able to accumulate metallic aerosols from its environment, similar to how the shell of the metal rafts is believed to have evolved. Either way, through some mysterious process, the Kushala Daora can metallize its tissue and reinforce its body. One interesting discovery that was, however, made is that the tissue in the various recovered Kushala samples was inconsistently metallized. Some only had metal skin, while others had a thick layer of metal underneath the skin. Some had metal teeth, and a few even had traces of metallization in the heart and the stomach. Mysteries still surround this discovery, but some scholars have proposed a daring theory. It could be that as a Kushala Daora ages, whatever process allows it to turn soft tissue into metal begins malfunctioning. This would, in principle, be akin to what we call old age in humans, previously vital bodily functions gradually degrading as a result of an accumulation of errors across a long lifetime. In the Kushala Daora's case, its life would end naturally when it accidentally metallized its internal organs, its body shutting down as its heart gradually turns into solid steel. Some have even extended this theory and suggested that the Kushala Daora found in the New World might be feeding on the crystals in the Elder's recess specifically to prevent this from happening, as the bioenergy contained in those crystals reinvigorates and maintains life functions, such as their metallization process. This is, however, at this point, entirely speculation, and more research remains necessary. While it may spell its death in the end potentially, during the Kushala Daora's prime, this metal hide serves it well. Not only is it impenetrable, it is also extremely heavy. This gives the Kushala a solid stance that cannot be easily broken by even floods or landslides. Its heavy body withstands those without moving an inch. And yet this weight does not slow the dragon down. The Kushala Daora has powerful, thick limbs and well-developed muscles that can move its heavy body with ease. In fact, watching a Kushala Daora pounce and run, one would never imagine just how heavy this slim creature actually is. The result of having a heavy body that can be moved quickly is that the physical attacks of the dragon are devastating. Its claws can cut through nearly anything thanks to the enormous force their weight produces. Some Kushala Daora can even enhance this deadliness by imbuing their claws with dragon energy. Nothing is known about this ability and how it works, however. The dragon's tail is also deadly, able to kill large flying wyverns with a single swipe. Its metal hide has been the stuff of legends for ages, and even before the dragon and its biological peculiarities were properly studied, many of the civilizations that worshipped the Kushala Daora likened its skin to steel. In the modern day, fragments of Kushala skin and Kushala scales are highly sought after for their quality, and an entire market has emerged focused on selling fakes. Between chunks of regular steel or hastily painted Kutku scales, the markets of Dandorma and Minegard are full of charlatans. An easy way to tell the authenticity of a Kushala scale is to gently hit it. A real scale will produce an eerie, high-pitched ringing, like a metal bell. This metal hide raised many questions, but one burned especially hot in the minds of early researchers. The Kushala Daora is incredibly heavy due to the metal, so heavy that no amount of muscle mass should allow it to fly. Its wings may be massive, but they themselves are also covered in heavy metal plating. And yet, the dragon is often seen flying near effortlessly, gliding through the air as if it were light, like a bird or flying wyvern. This was unexplainable, until the observation center and the guild once again swallowed their pride and lent an ear to rumors. For a long time, people had spoken of the Kushala's ability to control the very wind itself, its roar commanding the heavens like a chained dog. For a while, these ideas were dismissed as mere sensationalism. But as guild hunters and observers encountered the Kushala firsthand again and again, it became obvious that the rumors were true. The Kushala Daora can indeed control the wind, and, by extension, the weather. It has since been found that this wind control is what enables the Kushala to fly. By creating and manipulating updrafts under its wings, the dragon can force itself into the air despite its weight and ride air currents of its own making. As per usual with elder dragons, this answer simply raised more questions. How does the Kushala control the wind? The precise mechanism is still not understood, and due to the dragon's bizarre internal anatomy, the only real way to unravel this ability is to simply observe it. The Kushala Daora can produce winds from within its body, which are emitted directly through the hide. These winds can range from small breezes to tornadoes to atmospheric zephyrs that change the entire climate of a region. In fact, it has been noted that the mere presence of a Kushala tends to alter the weather, causing storms and gales in the area. Since the winds seem to emerge from the body, it is likely that the dragon has an internal organ that can produce them. No such organ has ever been recovered or found by hunters, though. The wind may even be produced by the hide itself. The handful of armors made from Kushala Daora skin still emit a light windy breeze and aid in the wearer's movements. Another key observation in this matter was that whenever a hunter managed to damage or break the short horns on the Kushala's head, its proficiency with its winds drastically degraded, leading researchers to believe that the horns control the winds once they are produced. How exactly they do this is unknown. Some scholars believe that the horns use electromagnetic waves to manipulate the paths of air currents, but that is mere speculation at this point and nearly impossible to test. However it may function, the fact of the matter is that this ability is what makes the Kushala Daora a walking disaster, more than worthy of the title Elder Dragon. Its winds come in many forms. At its most basic, this ability manifests as a shroud of gales surrounding the dragon. This wind aura allows the Kushala to fly, but it also offers an additional degree of protection. The wind around its body repels projectiles, deflects physical attacks, and even pushes enemies back if they get too close. Another immovable shield on top of an already impenetrable armor. This aura holds deeper significance still. Its power surges as the Kushala's rage grows, and the strength of the wind aura influences the strength of all of its other winds. It is thus reasonable to conclude that its other wind abilities all derive from this aura. The Kushala Daora can use its winds to change the weather itself, presumably by using its aura as a conduit to force its will onto the atmosphere in its surroundings. This is a devastating ability, as it can cause massive storms, tornadoes, typhoons, and even sandstorms. In one well-documented case, a village was beset by snowstorms for weeks without pause because a nearby Kushala had been upset by some unknown factor. On a smaller scale, the Kushala Daora can create wind blasts around its body and from its mouth, spewing out pressurized air like other dragons would spew fire. The mouth of the Kushala has indeed developed to be a sort of wind cannon, with a long snout lined with special tissue that compresses its wind further and further as it travels through it. Even its teeth are in service of this, being small and angled such that they form a guiding canal. The winds from the Kushala's mouth vary greatly in strength. They can be mere gusts meant to deter attackers, or they can be missiles of destructive air that rip targets apart. Again, the power of this particular application of its wind depends on its wind aura and its rage. A full-power Kushala Daora wind cannon is among the most destructive single monster attacks ever recorded, and is entirely unstoppable as it pulverizes solid rock instantly. With its wings, the Kushala Daora can produce swirling gales that combine into raging cyclones and twisters. These wind beasts broil and seethe, destroying all that they encounter while also hiding the dragon from sight. The Kushala seems to be able to control their paths, and some especially skilled individuals can even force two small twisters to combine into a massive one. These attacks are devastating, and can even be enhanced by the environment. When used in snowy regions, many of the Kushala Daora's winds carry ice and frost with them, and on the very rare occasion that a Kushala ventures near lava, its cyclones can sometimes catch fire and turn into infernal hurricanes. As already mentioned, as the Kushala Daora grows angrier, its winds become stronger. When its rage reaches its apex, the wind undergoes a peculiar transformation. It turns pitch black. In this state, called dragon wind, the gales of the Kushala Daora are so powerful that they can cleave enemies in half easily. The Kushala's dragon wind is rarely seen and impossible to defend against. One can only watch as the black storms rip apart all that stands in their way. 2 layers of unrivaled defense and an offensive ability that is nearly unstoppable. That is the power of an Elder Dragon. Repelling a Kushala Daora is thus extremely difficult, and for a time, the knowledge gathered by the Elder Dragon Observation Center did little to aid in the practical reality of fighting such a calamity. But then, finally, a weakness was found. The Kushala Daora is extremely weak to poisons of all kinds. Why this is the case is still up for debate. One leading hypothesis is that the process by which the dragon metallizes its tissue requires its immune system to be quite accepting of foreign materials entering the body, leading to a severely lacking immune response in case of poison. Whatever the case may be, poisoned weapons and arrows can incapacitate the Kushala reliably, and they seem to especially disrupt whatever organ it uses to produce its winds. For hunters looking to face the steel dragon, poisoned armaments are therefore indispensable. And so, time marched on. Hunters, with the aid of the observation center, pushed back against elder dragons, and fought many battles against many Kushala Daoras specifically. Over time, research on the creature progressed, and more fascinating details came to light. One aspect of the dragon that beckoned clarification was the matter of its species. Numerous hunters remarked that across their encounters with these dragons, they seem to vary greatly in color. Some wear a brilliant silver, others a dull gray, and some even a dark brown. Did this genus simply have an abundance of subspecies? Closer investigation revealed that no, the genus Kushala was a monotypic genus, a genus that only includes a single species. The actual reason for its color variation was much stranger. The hide of the Kushala is made of metal, and as such, it is not immune to the wear and tear metal experiences. Specifically, the hide oxidizes over time, its integrity changing alongside its color. This color shift happens on a cycle. The hide darkens and browns as it oxidizes, until the hide needs to be replaced. At this point, the Kushala Daora retreats into cold environments, where the freezing air is thought to aid in the next step. That step is to molt. Like an insect, the Kushala Daora breaks out of its old hide with a fresh armor already grown under its surface. This new hide is, at this point, milky white and quite soft by comparison, as it hasn't fully finished developing. In this state, the Kushala Daora is quite vulnerable. Knowing this, a Kushala that is getting ready to molt becomes extremely aggressive and territorial, hoping to scare off or vanquish any enemies before it enters this sensitive phase of its cycle. This strategy seems to work, as across all of history, only a handful of people, mostly Wyverians, have ever laid eyes upon a white Kushala Daora. Their discarded old hides, however, have been found in numerous cold regions, and often become a hotbed for smaller critters to nest in. This disqualified all the discolored Kushala Daora from being subspecies, as they were simply the known species at different times in its molting cycle. There was, however, one stage of this cycle that the guild chose to name a variant due to the extended danger it poses whenever it emerges. They call it the Rusted Kushala Daora, a Kushala that is in its final phase before molting. These individuals are entirely brown, their hide oxidized and rusted completely. They are essentially just waiting to molt, and since the aggression of a Kushala Daora increases rapidly the closer it gets to molting, the Rusted Kushala is a violent, terrifying creature. In terms of abilities, it is essentially equal to its steel-colored state. Its rusted hide may look brittle, but it is actually even tougher, as it is reinforced by the second metal hide underneath it that has already formed partially. But the reason the Rusted Kushala Daora was named a variant isn't a difference of power, but one of behavior. During the rest of its molting cycle, the Kushala Daora ranges from being a peaceful, unbothered creature to a grumpy but mostly passive dragon. The Rusted Kushala, however, will actively attempt to decimate anything it can find within its surroundings, its instincts screaming at it to eradicate all possible threats before molting. This leads it to actively attacking human settlements as well, and many dramatic battles with it have been fought at the gates of Dundorma. Luckily, Rusted Kushala are only a temporary threat. Weighed down by wearing 2 sets of armor, it will eventually retreat to its chosen molting spot and break apart, emerging in brilliant white and restarting the cycle. Thank you all so much for watching. As always, I hope you have a good time. I would like to, as usual, extend special thank yous to everyone who supports the channel financially, either via Patreon or YouTube channel memberships. A very special thank you to Admiral Frost, Alistair in Wonderland, Andrew, Artur Centeno, Autumns, Big Mac, Black Ace 202, Bö, Bruggy, Carcerion, Chocolate Coat, Claire Miboon, Coomer Noob, Darkest, Destro, Dracovane, Dragonlord, Dissy, Echo but Evil, Ethan Toombs, Feopuz, Glitch NPC, Grüße an Mama, Harpier, Hellbug Hunter, Hudsan, I'm just happy to be here, Iron Camel, It's Robin Now, Jacob Coleman, Joey Tribby 58, Jonathan Ginsberg, Carl the Crab, Kelly Barnett, Kogath, Lieferdienst, Logan Bilodeau, Lone Strider, Lufish, M1 Have 1 2, Macaroni Leviathan, Makamawi, Magenta Magenta, Makot 02, Matt Hat 124, Meta Defiance, Mr. Pyramid, Molly Mockery, Muhammad Avdol, My Name Gone, Nico Soleil, Nils Schlatter, Noah Schanz, Oakwood Tree, Paige Gandalf Soda, Pancake Poppy, Person 212, Precum King, Panonym, Quali, Quixotic Metroid 906, Rambling Robin, Raspberry, Regal Eagle, Resident Neko Arc, Ronger 97, Rose, Ryan Hook, Skiba, Shebo, Silly Wizard 97, Siragon, Sir Newt Newt, Soruka, Spark Drake, Tacty Wolf, The Alchemist, The Iciest Man Alive, The Dollarfish, 3 Palicos in a Trench Coat, Tigrex Chew Toy, Toby Kadachi's OnlyFans, Tsuki Midnight Boshi, Unk with Good Puss, Uthduna is an Octopus, Vulgar Beast, Wandering Soul, Wolf of Time, Zafi, Zeno Garcia, Zion H.E. Augenson, and Kuroneko. Take care, everyone. I'll see you around next time. Bye-bye.